Welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, once again coming back at you with a discussion and opinion video. Today I'm going to be discussing Austin Reiter, free agent center in the NFL, a player that I believe would be a tremendous signing for the New York Giants. Now, as many of my frequent viewers might notice, I'm in a new location. I did just move back to college, so bear with me. I know it's a little grim back there, but we're going to have that fixed up real soon within the next week. But anyway, let's go ahead and dive right into this video. Austin Reiter, formerly of the Kansas City Chiefs. Let's discuss him, what he could bring to the New York Giants, and what signing him would ultimately mean for the team and for the offensive line. Now, of course, we all know that this is an offensive line that has struggled for years. It has not been a good unit in a very long time. In my entire lifetime, I've really seen maybe 2-3 seasons of above average play from the New York Giants offensive line. That's at least how it feels. Okay, so they've been struggling for years. I was pretty impressed with the way that the starters played in preseason week 1. I thought they had a pretty solid outing against the New York Jets. But that was just the starters, and all they did was play 10 pass blocking snaps, 2 drives in total, and they weren't all going up against starting level players. So hard to really, walk away from that game and say, oh, the Giants offensive line is fixed. It's absolutely not fixed, because if you continue to watch the game, you know that the Giants have a horrible depth issue on the offensive line. They seriously lack depth over there. I mean, the backups are just not good enough. Some of them got injured. It was a mess with the second and the third stringers. And of course, Joe Judge did say, he was quoted saying, there's a good chance that the Giants could bring in some offensive line talent or at least some depth during this next week. Of course, there are camp cuts, I believe, tomorrow. I think that the roster has to be trimmed down by 5 roster spots in total, so 5 players will be cut. I know the Giants did place 3 players on injured reserve, which kind of counts towards those cuts. But ultimately, we got to make some cuts, and we also have to improve the roster in the meantime. Of course, all the teams in the NFL have to make these cuts. So there's a good chance that some pretty decent offensive line talent could get cut, and the Giants could make a move there, pick them up on the waiver wire. That's something to keep in mind. That could happen. That is a possibility, but it is not a strong likelihood. And whoever we did pick up on the waiver wire in that instance would absolutely be considered a depth piece. You're likely not getting a starter on the offensive line through the waiver wire at this point in the offseason. Really not even in the offseason anymore. We're in the preseason, so really unlikely that you would get someone like that on the waiver wire. But there is a player that I believe is a starting caliber player. Most people believe he is a starting caliber player in the NFL, just sitting out there in free agency. Now, this is a player that the Giants did bring in for a visit a few weeks ago. They met with him, they talked to him, and ultimately they did not sign a deal with him, which is a little interesting. What is the deal with Austin Reiter? How has he not been signed yet, and why has he not been signed yet? Well, that's a question that many NFL fans are asking right now, because Austin Reiter, you look at him on paper, you watch his film, he is a pretty good player, but he is still sitting available on the free agent market despite having interest from multiple teams. He did a visit with the Giants, with the Bengals, and one other team that I'm not remembering right now, but he has sat on the free agency market for the entirety of the summer, and most people are questioning why exactly that is. So I can't really answer that. No one really can, except for Austin Reiter and those teams that he has met with. But I can at least go over Austin Reiter's statistics, his PFF grades, all of that kind of stuff, and really give you a profile of who this player is and why I believe that the New York Giants should sign him. So Austin Reiter in 2020, this past season, he was playing for the Kansas City Chiefs. He is a 5-year NFL veteran. He spent 2016 and 2017 with Cleveland and spent 2018 through 2020 with the Kansas City Chiefs. He did win a Super Bowl. He has started in 6 playoff games, including each of the past 2 Super Bowls, and he did also lose this latest Super Bowl. As we all know, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers came out victorious over the Kansas City Chiefs in this latest Super Bowl. So let's talk about how he played this past season, though, in 2020. Now, he did have a 70.9 overall Pro Football Focus grade, which is pretty solid, definitely above average, and likely much higher than any Giants offensive lineman this past season. And he allowed 7 pressures, only 7 pressures, which is a pretty good number, low number, 0 sacks allowed, 78.3 pass blocking grade, 63.6 run blocking grade, and he did start 12 games, played in 15, and it was a total of 867 snaps on the season for Austin Reiter. So again, this is a guy who is very good in pass protection. I'm sure many of you know that if you have looked into Austin Reiter. And this is not just a one-year good example of pass protection from Austin Reiter. He's actually been a pretty good pass protector for the past 3 seasons in total, dating back to 2018 when he had a 78.6 overall PFF grade with an 81 pass blocking grade, which on their metric scale is really, really high, actually kind of close to an elite category. He only allowed 3 pressures and 1 sack in 266 snaps, 4 starts and 11 games played in that 2018 season. So pretty good start to his career with the Kansas City Chiefs, at least. Small sample size, 4 starts, but he played really well in those 4 starts, and he did look like a pretty damn good player, which is why he got his starting role in 2019. He started all 16 games for the Chiefs in 2019. Now, this season did not look as good as that small sample size the season prior, but it did look pretty good anyway. He had a 63.0 overall grade by PFF. He allowed only 6 pressures and 2 sacks, and his pass blocking grade was once again in that close to elite category with 82.0 overall pass blocking grade. 51.2 run blocking grade, though. Like I said, 16 starts, 1,045 total snaps on the season in 2019. So what we're seeing here is 3 years in a row with a PFF pass blocking grade of 78 overall or higher. Now, a lot of people have said that that is also a product of the Kansas City Chiefs offense and playing with Patrick Mahomes and the way that he's able to escape pressure. And that's absolutely true, but there is something to be said about 3 years consistently of production and efficiency in this regard for Austin Reiter. 78 overall pass blocking grade or higher for each of the last 3 seasons. He's only had 6, 7, 13, 14 total pressures in the past 3 years, which is a fraction of what guys like Shane Lemieux, Andrew Thomas, Matt Parrott had this past year, or Matt Parrott not really, but Cam Fleming, Matt Parrott didn't play enough, but Cam Fleming was also allowing a lot of pressures. But here's where things get a little muddy. I mentioned all those guys just then, Will Hernandez, Shane Lemieux, those guys on the interior that were struggling, but we do have what we believe to be a very solid quality starting center on the New York Giants with Nick Gates. And so that's where things become questionable with Austin Reiter and whether or not the Giants should sign him. Because yes, these other guys that I mentioned, they did struggle in pass protection. Hernandez, Thomas, those guys struggled and they allowed a lot of pressures. But they don't play the center position. So it's a lot different. You're not bringing Austin Reiter in to replace any one of those guys or to help you at any of those positions. He is purely a center. He does not have any experience really at other positions. He's been a pure center for the entirety of his career. He has been playing center. So you're not going to want to move him along the offensive line, but you also feel very comfortable with what you have in Nick Gates at center. So what exactly do you do going forward if you sign Austin Reiter? Well, there is one possible solution. The other solution is to not sign him at all and just continue with Nick Gates as your starting center. But the other solution that involves bringing Austin Reiter into the New York Giants is to move Nick Gates back to right guard. Now, if you remember, when Nick Gates came out of college, he was playing the right tackle position, and the Giants did have him play a little bit of right tackle in his first season, 2019. But by the end of the year, they also moved him over to right guard, and he did have a really good game at right guard at the end of that season. He played 77 total snaps at right guard in 2019, and he started at right guard in Week 15 versus the Miami Dolphins. He had 68 snaps in that game. On those 68 snaps, he did have an 82.1 overall Pro Football Focus grade. He allowed 0 pressures with a 75.5 run blocking grade and an 87.3 pass blocking grade. This game against the Miami Dolphins was the best game of Nick Gates' career thus far. Now, of course, he did have some really good moments playing center this past year. He played center for the first time in 2020, had some really good moments, lots of ups and downs. He was still learning the position, which is understandable. You're going to have some struggles throughout the learning process. There's a learning curve. But overall, I was impressed with him in his basically rookie season at center. I mean, he's an NFL veteran. He's been in the league for a few years now. This is going to be his 3rd season or his 4th. Yeah. So, but his first season playing center was just this past year. So he's basically learning a whole new position. He's kind of a rookie at that position in some ways. I mean, that's only his 2nd career season. So this is his 3rd now. But Nick Gates playing guard was really impressive in 2019. This past year, though, like I said, I was pretty impressed with him at center. I'm not necessarily too crazy about the idea of moving him across the offensive line back to right guard because I think that he has a lot of great tools at center. I think he showed a lot of promise, looked like a really good player, and has a very high ceiling and has a lot of room to grow. So I do think that he can be a very high quality center in the NFL, and I'm not so sure I want to give up on that development with Nick Gates and move him back to right guard. Now here's the thing with Austin Reiter though. I would love to sign him at the very least to be a depth piece, to play behind Nick Gates, or to fill in for Nick Gates if Nick Gates were to ever be injured, or if Nick Gates were to not be playing well, and then you can go ahead and just move on and bench him if you had to, or move him to another position on the offensive line. Because one of the things that I love about Nick Gates is he's super versatile. He played center, he played right guard, and he played right tackle. You can really play him on all positions of the offensive line, I would assume, and he can play them pretty well, at least at every position. I think he's an average to above. So I like Nick Gates a lot for his versatility, and that's why bringing Austin Reiter in, you could move Nick Gates along the offensive line and get a little creative because of his versatility. You could put Nick Gates back at right guard, but like I said, if Austin Reiter is willing to sign on with the Giants as a backup, then he would absolutely have an avenue to start some games. With any Nick Gates injuries or any Nick Gates struggles, you could move him to the bench and put Austin Reiter right in, and I think that you're going to continue to get quality offensive line play from either one of those guys, which I think is exciting. The Giants haven't had good depth on the offensive line ever, and now they can finally do that if they are to sign Austin Reiter, but that is a question mark. Is he willing to accept the backup offensive lineman role? Thus far, it seems like he is not willing to accept that because he has not signed with an NFL team. And I would assume at this point, he's not getting any starting jobs and he doesn't want to play unless he's getting a starting job. That's what it seems like to me. That's what a lot of people are guessing as to why Austin Reiter hasn't been signed by an NFL team. That would be my guess. Maybe he just wants to be a starter and no one's offering him a starting job yet. So he's going to wait until sometime during the regular season. If a team center does get injured, then they're going to sign Austin Reiter immediately. And he doesn't have to worry about being a backup or fighting for a roster position at that point because he's an emergency signing. So I think that's the avenue that Austin Reiter is going down. Now, of course, I could be wrong. By the time this video is posted, Austin Reiter could sign with the New York Giants. If that were to be the case, then of course take this as my evaluation on the signing and my grade of it. Not really grade, but how excited and how confident I am in the signing. You can use this video in that way, but I do want to give my opinion here. I think that the Giants should go out and sign Austin Reiter. If he's willing to be a backup, then I would like to keep Nick Gates at center for as long as we can due to the fact that he just made that transition. He's made it pretty well, and he really does have a super high ceiling at that position as he's continuing to develop. Another reason why is Will Hernandez. So Will Hernandez has been a left guard throughout his NFL career, but he did make the switch this offseason to right guard, and it seems like he made it pretty successfully. I was very encouraged by the way that Will Hernandez played at right guard in the first preseason game of the season against the New York Jets, and I know that he has worked really hard to make that transition to right guard, and I think it would be a little unfair after having him put in all this hard work to make that transition to just flip him back over to left guard for the start of the season. Like, why did you spend the whole offseason training to be a right guard when we were just going to sign somebody and flip you back over to left guard at the start of the season? Because he hasn't taken any snaps at left guard during the preseason or training camp even. So seems like the Giants are pretty dead set on keeping Will Hernandez at right guard and keeping Nick Gates at center, which is why I think that this signing will not happen, but I do think that it should because at the very least he can be a depth piece. Maybe you can try him at left guard or right guard. You can move him around and see if he does have any potential at those positions, but at the very least I do think he is a upgrade over certain players that we have on the offensive line, especially the backups. I think that he would be our best backup by far, maybe rivaled by Nate Solder, but on the interior, yes, he would be our best backup. And I would be really encouraged by the fact that Austin Reiter is a backup rotational piece, even because we know that Joe Judge likes to rotate offensive linemen. He could be a backup depth piece for the New York Giants offensive line. So I think that the Giants should go ahead and make this signing, but I would love to hear what everybody else has to say about this potential signing for the New York Giants. This is a player, again, they did visit with Austin Reiter. They had a visit with him, and they have not signed him. But the question still remains, will the Giants go ahead and do it? Will Austin Reiter be willing to accept that job? And what exactly is going to happen between now and the start of the regular season? Don't know, but excited to continue to discuss the possibilities of now in the regular season, and of course to cover all the news and signings and rumors, everything like that right here on Fireside Giants. Love to discuss that and make elite content for you guys daily. But of course, like I mentioned, I want to hear what your thoughts on Austin Reiter and the potential of signing him down below in the comment section. Make sure to leave a like on the video if you did enjoy this, and please subscribe if you're new. Ring the bell so you do not miss a video, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Giants.